The Secretary of State is here. Yeah, our Nellie. You remember the commercials.
The Dan Yorke State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Takeo Comfort Solutions.
Yeah, that might be just a little bit too familiar now that she is the Madam Secretary, but you know, most of us like her. So, our Nellie. She's quietly been effective in making some changes on how we vote. In fact, you know, me, who's supposed to be paying attention to all this, goes to the primary ballot, and I'm ready to draw my magic marker line. All of a sudden, I got to fill in a dot. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I started to, it's like the SAT. So I gotta get this thing right. But some good changes coming up if you haven't voted yet in November. So wise up and take some notes, because the Secretary of State's got some information for you. In the meantime, we've got things to talk about just at the beginning here, if you don't mind. Welcome into my state of mind. To the rundown we go real quick. And of course, all right, if you're watching at 7:30, we don't know nothing. If you're watching at midnight, you know all about this. But let's pretend either way. Here's the headline. Yeah, of course it will be. And by the way, that's not unique to this presidential race. The VPs are all about their senior nominees. We have another one? Yeah. It probably will be. And in some ways, that's probably too bad. Here's a preview.
I'm Mike Pence.
Mike Pence
Just got to be myself.
and Tim Kaine will introduce themselves to a national audience when they take center stage at Longwood University in Virginia tonight. Both have served in government for years, but a new CBS News poll shows a majority of registered voters don't know enough to have an opinion of them.
Surprising things sometimes happen in these vice presidential debates.
Longwood political science professor Bill Harbour says the VP nominees need to sell themselves to American voters while trying to boost their running mates' low approval ratings.
Never have we seen a vice presidential debate where the two candidates have to make up more ground and deal with more problems created by the images of the two people at the top of the ticket.
And Mike Pence could spend tonight facing tough questions about the latest controversy to hit Donald Trump, his tax returns.
The businessman reportedly claimed nearly $1 billion in losses in the 90s, possibly shielding him from paying federal income taxes for years.
I have brilliantly used those laws.
What kind of genius loses $1 billion in the first place?
Hillary Clinton now leads Trump in the polls 45 to 41%. Tonight, Kaine will work to hold on to that lead, while Pence looks to move the numbers for the Trump campaign.
You know, the probable most difficult task here is that for Mike Pence, right? Because he's got to make these excuses for Donald, and I'm guessing Tim Kaine will be on him like you know what on you know what about Donald Trump. My guess is that a lot of us who watch this thing will be left wanting, thinking these two guys could both be the President of the United States. And my guess is that by Thursday, for the most part, you'll forget what they had to say, unless one of them veers off the track and really creates a stink. And I think both are too smart to do that. 7:30 audience, we'll see. Midnight audience, right? Moving on. The tax mystery, though, for Donald Trump is going to, you know, cramp him again. Headlines, the media really likes this one now. It wasn't until the New York Times found his 1995 tax returns that you got this stuff going on, like the Washington Post headline, and then back to the New York Times, right? Led him to ruin. Listen, you've got to watch the Frontline piece. It's online, I'm sure, on PBS, and learn about how the bankers really felt that he was too big to fail. They were in so deep in debt with him that taking pennies on the dollar would have been a big mistake, and they played the game the right way. But I will tell you that his acumen for business wanes comparative to his talent for being a promoter, and that's what it was able to dig him out of this $900+ million hole, right? Here's the latest on the tax thing.
I have legally used the tax laws to my benefit.
Donald Trump made no apologies for claiming massive losses decades ago, which may have shielded him from personal federal income taxes for 18 years.
Honestly, I have brilliantly used those laws.
Trump tried to brush off revelations his businesses lost more than $900 million in the mid-1990s and blamed his company's financial problems on the 1990-91 recession.
The conditions facing real estate developers in the early 90s were almost as bad as the Great Depression in 1929 and far worse than the Great Recession in 2008.
According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, that recession in the early 90s was among the most mild of the 9 prior economic downturns since World War II.
I went through it with my own business during that time, and I can tell you that Donald Trump is not completely accurate, but it was a lot more painful than some people want to write about. Nonetheless, look, the loss is huge, but I don't think it's any particular skin off Donald Trump's nose when it comes to the presidency. It's embarrassing to have lost all that money, but his net worth now, in the neighborhood of just less than $4 billion, about $6 billion less than he'll tell you it is, kind of stands on its own right now. The carryover on the taxes in terms of losses forward, as long as there's nothing illegal in there, oh well. I know there's a lot of class envy going on. He doesn't pay his own personal federal taxes, but you're busting your tail and you are. And I get that, and I get that anger, but you know what? I don't think it's intellectually well placed. However, this had to be a proper tax return for 20 years, which leads us to issue number 3, and that is he better release his tax returns. Not because the law says, but because he's got to survive the situation answering some questions. And if he doesn't, I think that slow drip is going to hurt him, as if some things haven't hurt him bad enough in the last week already with the polls flipping the way they have. Coming back home, the Speaker of the House responding to push polls or the polls or whatever the campaign brings, dropped a bomb today. Headline, he promises to cut the car tax if he's elected. He had a press conference at John Hazenwhite Jr.'s Take-O Incorporated in Cranston. Johnny didn't endorse Speaker Mattiello, but he always leaves his facility open for good ideas, and there's nobody in the state that's going to say this isn't a good idea.
And they've told me they don't like the car tax. It's regressive, it's unfair, and they just don't like it. So Nick, the representative from District 15, is going to utilize all of the power of the speakership to help reduce with the ultimate goal of eliminating the car tax.
If you remember the history on this, Governor Carcieri knocked it out of the budget, you know, way back when, and took the $6,000 threshold of value before your car became taxed and knocked it down to an optional $500 for the towns in the state. And of course, all the local communities bit based on the lack of revenue they were getting from the state. It was a disaster waiting to happen and has been. If we needed a car tax, we should be replicating what Massachusetts does. A whole lot cleaner. You don't need a vehicle value commission, any of that. But that's tied into a whole reform of Proposition 2.5, which this state desperately needs. The Speaker is suggesting that over the course of no more than a couple of terms for him, which would be 4 years, he wants to eliminate the entire thing altogether, so we could jump right back to a $6,000 threshold minimally. Great stuff. It's amazing what a campaign will do, right? And Steve Frias is in the unenviable position of having to say, yeah, but yeah.
Been repealing and lowering first of all, lowering and repealing the car tax. And what I have to say about this is simple. He's had 3 years in power, 3 years as Speaker of the House. He could have done it already, and he didn't.
Yeah. That's the guy who's running against Dick Mattiello in District 15. He's been on the program. He'll be on again. This is what it's why we have campaigns. Good ideas come out of campaigns. We'll talk more about it. And by the way, I did have a conversation with Speaker Mattiello about this. You'll hear it on the radio tomorrow, weekdays 3 to 6 on WPRO. And my guess is he might be in here later this week to actually knock it out. Speaking of campaigns and the rules behind them, the Secretary of State's got a lot to do with that. A couple of headlines that I want to show you here. The Rhode Island Secretary of State urges voters to get familiar with the primary ballot. Yes, you should. That was for the last one. And then, of course, she's looking to expand voter turnout because she's part of that Democratic conspiracy where every idiot ought to be at the polls no matter whether they've studied the issues or not. What a terrible way to introduce you.
Hi there, Dan. How are you?
How are you, Nellie? It's great to have you back.
Oh, thanks. It's been too long.
Where you
been busy.
Yeah? Doing what?
Been working.
Like putting new machines? I honest to God, during the primary, I forgot that you'd done the thing. And I went and I was like, okay, the dot. Make sure I get the dot circled there. I felt like I was taking the SATs.
Well, here's the thing. And wasn't it a cleaner looking ballot?
It was.
It was easier to understand.
Yeah.
And that's because we have these new voting machines.
Yeah.
So in addition, for the next election, which is the November one, there will be no straight party ticket. So everybody needs to really study their ballot and go down the ballot. So, because as you know, it's not just about the federal and the national, it's about the local as well. and we've got some great issues to be, looked at in those ballot referenda questions as well.
Well, master lever being eliminated now creates some people having to think. I wonder how long the lines are going to be. Where people are going,
they shouldn't be. So here's the thing. So here's the thing.
Right?
If you're stuck in the line for some reason, which I hope you're not, because we will have streamlined some procedures, you can use that time on your phone, look up your ballot. And so you've already thought it out. I think, that's one of the things I've been telling people. Elections are not pop quizzes. We give you the questions ahead of time. You just have to look them up on the web, look them up for your own precinct, and get ready to vote. We are also, by the end of this week, you will have at your footstep, at your home, a brand new, redesigned voter information handbook. So, like you, I take, pride in sort of looking at these things ahead of time. And it's been really an issue that from the minute I saw my first voter information handbooks, I thought, this could be done better. And so we blew it up. Well,
when they come, you go, I don't want to read this.
Exactly. But now this one, you will want to read it because it's pretty. It's
paint by numbers?
It's pretty. It's got this, nice design to it, nice flow. And it's in plain English. It says, if you approve this question, this is what approve means. If you reject this question, this is what reject means. So.
Is it all in English or is it Spanish too?
We have a Spanish language version for those communities that fall under the Voting Rights Act, and we are required by federal law to provide that. So Providence, Pawtucket, and Central Falls will receive a dual language book.
It's funny, the lines and the idea that people should come prepared, and I fully support everything you're doing to try to help people along, but still, it reminds me of the people who be in a fast food joint, who be on the line for like 15 minutes, and then when they come to the register, they look up at the thing and go, what do I want? Or do you play any golf?
No, I don't have time for golf.
It's the, you're not that busy, for God's sake. It's just a ballot you've reorganized. Yeah. But anyway, you go to, the guy, it's your turn to putt, and all of a sudden now it's your turn. Now you start lining up the putt.
No, it's the 3 kids in addition to the job that keeps you from the golf.
Oh,
but yeah.
Yes, because you are the modern professional political person.
But no, so if you want to look at this up, look, you go to vote.ri.gov, or for you, vota.ri.gov, and you can see the Spanish or the English language version of your ballot.
No habla español muy bien, pero we'll be right back. All right, in all seriousness, there's a bunch of technology that you need to be aware of here, and Eyewitness News put this thing together before we continue with the Secretary.
You'll still be handed a paper ballot when you go to the polls this September, but you won't fill it out the same way. Secretary of State Nellie Gorbea showed off Rhode Island's brand new voting equipment at the State House, saying the new tools will make the process smoother.
Because voting equipment, really, if you think about it, is democracy's infrastructure. Voters, election administrators, and candidates alike depend on modern, reliable voting equipment to deliver fair, fast, and accurate elections.
The 590 new voting machines were bought from a Nebraska company, replacing ones from nearly 20 years ago. They have screens to warn voters if they filled out a ballot incorrectly and wireless connections to transmit results faster. The cost, $9.3 million over 8 years. In addition to the upgrades, 1 in 10 polling places will also be part of a pilot program to test new electronic tablets for checking voters in.
They replaced this master list being printed in every single polling place.
And city halls will be getting new machines to print ballots on demand.
This is a huge advance as well, because what it'll allow us to do is to never run out of ballots and to also not over-order ballots.
The actual ballot itself won't look quite the same either, with circles to fill in rather than arrows to connect. Secretary Gorbea also announced that Rhode Islanders will be able to register to vote online starting August 1st. The website is vote.ri.gov. You'll also be able to update your address there.
Well, it's good. It's dummy-proof, in a way.
Well, it's easy. It's easy to use.
I've made many mistakes at the ballot box.
Yeah, well,
I had to get a provisional one time. Anyway. Well, good for you.
Yeah.
Good for
I
us.
mean, I think, when I ran, I talked about wanting to make sure elections were fair, fast, and accurate. And the thing is that a lot of people think, oh, she's going to get elected, nothing's going to happen. No, we've proven to people that, no, we will work on things for you. And so that's what I get up every morning to do.
Did you really think that people didn't have an expectation that you would improve the technology at the ballot box?
I think there were a lot of concerns, though.
By whom?
Different people. Not maybe you. You're informed. But no, I mean, I think that, proving to people that that you can get the job done is I think, part of, I think, what's different.
What's going on with this Board of Elections problem? Now, people get confused. They think that the Board of Elections reports to you, and it does not.
No, it does not. It is an independent agency. We have kind of like a three-legged stool in Rhode Island.
Right.
The State Board of Elections, the Secretary of State, and the local boards of canvassers. So I prepare the ballot. I handle the central voter registration system. And then the day of elections is run really by the State Board of Elections along with the local boards of canvassers.
Are you concerned with the flap over Mr. Kando, who was excused by the board after a long-winded controversy of his alleged insubordination and now his litigation over such blah, 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 that's going to impact what happens on Election Day?
I have no reason to be concerned. I've been in touch with the Board of Elections commissioners themselves. Our staff has been working very closely with the staff over at the State Board of Elections as well as with the local boards of canvassers. And so I think, you will find that, this election will go smoothly and people should get out and vote.
Do you have a thought as to whether or not the system, the three pods, if you will, of oversight and execution in the system ought to be revisited? Should the Secretary of State's office have a more primary role over actual voting execution?
I think that...
And review and penalty and all of that?
Every system can always, use some examination. For example, I was able to get the legislature and the governor to entrust me with the purchasing of the equipment. The board had tried for several years and not been able to for whatever reasons, and I was able to get it done. Having said that, the day of election, I think really it's best to have nonpartisan entities handling the day of elections, or multi-party entities, because to have an elected who is a member of a party, it's always going to cause some concern for someone. And in the end, I want to make sure that Rhode Islanders trust their elections. They trust that things have been handled fairly.
Speaking of that, how focused are you on some of this very concerning worry about Russia? It doesn't seem like it's folly. It seems like we've got a very, very minimally propagandish or maximally hands-on intervention in the election here.
Yeah. No, and as I said, there's nothing more critical to our democracy than making sure people trust that it's being done well and it's done fairly and accurately.
So how protected is the technology?
From the minute I came in, not only was I able to purchase these new voting systems and equipment, but also we upgraded all of our IT systems in the Department of State. And we have a great team of people who get up every morning to make sure that everything's running like it should. You can't compare what happens in other states with Rhode Island because every state handles election systems differently. I can only speak really about Rhode Island systems and tell you that absolutely, we are taking all the measures, including having conversations with the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security to make sure that there are no breaches to our systems.
Well, respectfully to you, and I'm sure you're doing all your diligence, I mean, we spend hundreds of millions, sometimes billions of dollars in computer systems in the state and can't get a damn thing right when it comes to the DLT, the Human Services. I mean, we seem to either have really bad luck or not so smart people working on the IT side.
We have a great team at the Department of State, and I will absolutely go to bat for them because they're there, every day, every night. They're watching what's happening in our systems, and also there's ways in which you can control for things, right? So our central voter registration system, it's not like you can just log in from anywhere. You have to be at a dedicated terminal. I mean, there's a number of things that you have to do to protect your systems, and we've taken those steps to make sure that we can deliver to Rhode Islanders the election systems that they deserve.
All right, when we come back, we'll talk about this get the vote out thing. It's always a fun debate for me. Stay with us.
Be a voter.
Be a voter.
Be a voter. Be a voter.
Be a voter. Be a voter.
Be a voter.
Government absolutely has to be accountable to the people. But in order to do that, you need to vote. Be a voter.
Now, it would seem un-American for me to suggest that I disagree with that.
Yeah, don't go there.
But where's the premise?
No.
Study the issues.
Absolutely.
I have been one who's argued against quantity versus quality all of my adult and working life, especially on the air. I don't need another bunch of uninformed people piling up against the ballot machines who don't know a clue about what it is they want to do. I think we have, unfortunately right now, a very uninformed electorate when it comes to civics, government, understanding about how it goes. I wish they all studied all the benefits of voting for Nellie Gorbea for Secretary of State, but they probably came in, many people voted blindly. There's a lot of uninformed voting going on. Your thought on that?
No, I mean, I disagree. I actually think people are more informed than you would think. Certainly my election was one where the informed people were convinced that it wasn't going to work out that way, right?
Madam Secretary, I'll bet you a beer. We go down, pick a place, Providence Place Mall, Kennedy Plaza, Garden City, wherever you want to go, and ask 10 people how the House Speaker is elected to the speakership. How many people do you think would know the answer to that question?
But here's the question. But is that really the right question? Because people can't vote for speaker.
All right, your turn. What question do you want to ask the 10 people? Well, what do you mean people can't really vote for the speaker? The idea that they don't. Of course they can.
The role of speaper. They vote for the candidates.
But they should know what the dynamics are.
But I want to make sure.
Okay, so I want to make sure. What do you think is a question that everyone would know?
Well, I would want them to know that November 8th
there's an election. If we went to the 10 people, I ask my question, then you ask your question, testing the acumen of the electorate. What easy question would you give them? Like a basic question.
Yeah. Well, like who are you supporting for your local community?
No.
Yes.
Like a government or civics question. Let me give you another one.
Okay.
If I ask 10 people what the 3 branches of government are, how many of those people would know what that is?
I think more than you would think. I'm out there all the time talking with people, and part of my job as your Secretary of State.
All right, how many out of 10 would know the 3 branches of government?
I'm not going to guess.
Come on.
No. Here's the thing. But what are you doing about it? What are you doing about it? So I have created a civics education coordinator position that is working with the schools as we speak to increase knowledge about Rhode Island history and civics. The voter information handbook that we just talked about is
I'm
an
glad you're
awesome
doing
way.
that. Good. Go to the website. Support.
Vote.
I support the Secretary of State. We love our Nellie. All right, here's the bet. I say out of 10, no more than 3 people could give me the 3 branches of government. How many do you say?
I disagree.
How many do you say?
I'm not going to play that game because I have full faith in our Rhode Island electorate.
Oh, you've become.
I would not.
I've always had you as a non-careful. I thought you were. You're afraid to guess how stupid the electorate is.
No.
I say 3. You say how many?
No, I'm not going to go there. You know what's more important? That November 8th, we have a critically important election where there are going to be federal, state, and local decisions that need to be made by Rhode Islanders. And where do you get the information at? Vote.ri.gov. You find your polling place, you look at your ballot, talk with your neighbors, have these conversations that you and I are having or might have at the mall, and encourage each other to learn about the issues and go out and vote on November 8th.
All right, listen.
Be a voter.
You're good, but you're a little chicken. You're good. You think it's like 6?
Let's see. How about if we talk about online voter registration?
I got to go. Telling you, I'd win the bet. Final word and we can back. Thank you. Incredible discipline by the Secretary of State there, but I'll get her. I'll get her on this one way or the other, and I'd win that vote, and you know it. Professor from Brown tomorrow on political science to take a look at the vice presidential debate, the Speaker of the House likely later in the week, and we'll talk to you tomorrow at 3 o'clock, of course, on WPRO weekdays, 3 till 6. Pleasure having you aboard. Thanks so much for tuning in, and you have a great evening. Enjoy the debate if you're watching at 7:30.